Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Denver, Colorado, it's time for Franchise Bible Coach Radio. Now, here are your hosts.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Franchise Bible Coach Radio with Rick and Rob. We have a very special guest today, Sean Manning from Payroll Vault. And he's been very involved in the franchise industry as a great franchise leader. He's also been involved with the International Franchise Association and a lot of their initiatives with getting things moving forward in the finance area and the human resources area and the employment area. Just a wealth of knowledge with you today, Sean. So you're what we call one of those franchise superstars that I like to introduce.
Okay.
Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Awesome. I said that to another friend. I said that to another franchisor a couple weeks ago, and he thought that was a very accurate summation. So.
It's not bad when you think about the effort. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, the amount of time you put into it, you should at least have a really great title, right? So I'm going to go ahead and introduce my co-host, Rob Ganley, and turn it over to him, and we'll just get things started here. We're excited. This is week number 8, and this is in our Fight for Your Franchise Challenge. We're very excited that you're participating and helping us with that, and we're getting lots and lots of people that are getting involved, Sean, and we're seeing more great stories come out of the franchise industry of franchisors and franchise owners that are succeeding and finding ways to kind of adapt their business models and everything else. So this week we're talking about financial mastery and some no-nonsense techniques to improve cash flow for franchisors and for franchise owners. So that's our theme. And Rob, take it away.
All right. Well, thanks, Rick. And Sean, welcome. It's good to have you with us today.
You bet. Good to be here.
Great. And I just want to take a quick second and thank our sponsors, SEO Samba. They're an award-winning marketing automation platform, and just want to thank them for making this possible so that we can reach out to the franchise industry and have them tell their stories of innovation and how we're moving forward here in these unprecedented times. But as we get started, Sean, it's always a pleasure. We know each other. It's great to have you, but I'd love to hear your story. I know a little bit about it, but the first thing I'd like the listeners to kind of understand is your background and how the brand of Payroll Vault came about.
Sure. And I think that's an important part of any process with communication, especially important topics like we're going to talk about today is get a little bit of the history, I guess. And it won't take me long, but I'm going to go back. My first degree is in restaurant management. So, I'm very familiar with that industry due to that experience. My father started his accounting firm as a franchisee of a brand. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, as my career got started, I looked at his business and saw a little bit of opportunity around even what he was doing. So I ended up shifting my career path a little bit. And after a couple of years in the restaurant industry, I actually joined my father in his business with the intention that I would kind of learn the accounting industry. I became a CPA, had to go back to school, get the accounting credits. But the ultimate goal was to buy that business from him and help support his transition and or retirement and continue to serve our clients. So we did monthly bookkeeping and accounting and tax for, up to 200-300 clients at a time. So, and they were all small businesses. And in that process just became very consultative. So we not only did the monthly accounting and tax, but we offered them basically free advice services as part of that, just to build on that relationship. And that lasted for several years, up until about 2008. Believe it or not, during the last big recession, we're kind of in a funky recessionary time right now, right? But in 2008, we launched Payroll Vault as a sister company to our accounting firm, and had actually quite a bit of success in the launch of that business. And that grew for several years. 3 or 4 years went by, and had an opportunity to educate other accountants into the value of building a sister company like Payroll Vault to their accounting firm. And in that process, decided the best way to help others in gathering this opportunity with payroll services, putting it together, was to franchise. And actually met Rick through networking, and I think we talked about it for about a year before we decided to say, hey, if we're gonna offer advice in a system to somebody, we're gonna give them everything we have: the name, the brand, the systems, the foundation, everything. And so I decided to franchise in 2012, late 2012, and we now have over 50 locations nationwide. Just in an economy that's kind of in flux and a little bit unpredictable right now is probably the best way to put it. We actually awarded 4 franchises in the last 2 weeks. So there continues to be emerging opportunities and people looking for a shift, a good opportunity to make a shift. So we're training 2 of them next week. So we're excited about that. And that kind of got us up to this point. So I did sell my accounting firm. My job is CEO of Payroll Vault. So I spend all of my time focused around that. And I do have one other company I'm partnered with that sprung out of the accounting firm, and that's called the Mastery Network. And so the Mastery Network is actually a company that actually teaches entrepreneurship. And part of that, it's a 24 course class that really kind of teaches that. You have to connect with either an advisor or somebody to get access. So I'm happy to share contact information there. But one of those modules that we've written and produced is financial intelligence. So there's about 5 to 6 sessions around financial intelligence and the importance of numbers in your business, which I'm glad we'll be able to get into and talk a little bit more. So that's my history. And hopefully that kind of sets the stage for people's knowledge about my experiences and preview kind of what we're going to talk about next.
Well, perfect. And your model lends itself to this new world we're in, right? It's because you have a flexible model, and it's a little different than some of the other brick and mortar models and things like that. So you've been able to kind of adapt right into that.
Yeah, we shifted. I think Tricia, our COO, made a decision about a week before, I think the governor did, to work from home environment. And so that same week later, I think it was a Thursday or Friday, when the governor of Colorado announced that he would like everybody to do that if they can. Obviously, we are essential, so we didn't have to. But we felt the safety of our team and the comfort of our team. And we had all the capabilities and systems already set up to work remote. And we've even done Discovery Days remote. And now we're doing our first remote training next week. So we were well positioned for the transition, and we're in for we actually even hosted a remote conference two weeks ago that was scheduled to be in Arizona, and we couldn't do that. So we actually had a 3-hour conference that we held with all of our franchisees.
Awesome. Yeah, that's we're in a brave new world, aren't we, with technology? So that's fabulous. And for the listeners that maybe don't know you as well as we do, describe what Payroll Vault does as far as on the unit level with what the franchisees provide for customers out there.
Yeah, it's basically a boutique style payroll service model. So we actually take more of a consultative approach to onboarding small businesses as our market that typically get underserved and underrespected, really. Mm-hmm. So we really hone in on what a small business needs. And actually, starting next week, there's going to be a lot more to the process with what I call compliance, right? The work environment's going to be a little bit different. There's more need for, updated posters with all the new compliance rules with COVID related. There's even time clock resources that, people are going to be working remote. How do they clock in? Can they clock in? How does that work? And even the HR component around it. Can I take a person's temperature when they walk in the door? Typically you couldn't do that. Mm-hmm. And in this current work environment, you actually have the authority and ability to do that for the public safety issues out there. So basically what we've done is we've been able to really customize and look at payroll services as a resource to help business owners be more successful and manage that process better, make their employees happier. So that's kind of foundationally what we do with Payroll Vault.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that. Well, as I said earlier, the theme this week is financial mastery and no nonsense techniques to improve your cash flow as an operator, being a franchisor or a franchise owner. Can you give us some tips that you have implemented with your franchise network to improve cash flow during this crisis?
Yeah, absolutely. We were pretty aggressive with information and this knowledge sharing. So we did a couple things. Actually, our team was positioned to take a break, go on vacation, kind of the home office team. And so we really kind of had to obviously put everything on hold, and fortunately step in very aggressively with gathering information, right? And then find a way to disseminate that as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So, and I think most of us did that. Running our businesses. So I would have to say the last 8 weeks is a little bit like a blur, kind of like being in tax season. If I had to compare it back, we've been putting probably 4 times the effort in order to find what resources are available. There was obviously the PPP SBA loans and the EIDL SBA loans. What was going to be best for our franchisees? Some of them, it was better for them to do the PPP loans. Some of them, it was better to do the EIDL loans. So we looked at help them make those decisions and educate them on how to manage that. And the interesting thing is we're in the businesses so we're actually helping clients in this process too, a little bit. And then I don't know if everybody's fully aware, but the Families First Coronavirus Response Act has some tremendous impact to small business. And so we dissected that a little bit, and we went in and said, okay, now you're required as a small business employer to offer paid leave to your employees under this act if they qualify. Well, the good news is that's hard on a small business to offer paid leave, 2 weeks paid leave, or in some cases, if they have kids at home, it's up to 12 weeks paid leave, right? So fortunately, the part of the act also allows for a credit against payroll taxes. So we went and looked at who might qualify for that and how that might benefit. And then, so we looked at the act, the stimulus bill, all components of it, and basically became an advisor to our franchisees, who also then became advisor to their small business owners in getting them foundationally prepared for what they need to be thinking about. So quick response, looking at opportunity, and then finding ways to support our franchisees there. And then I think further education comes now, right? So a lot of people got their PPP loans and or EIDL grant loans, and how are they managing that process moving forward? So there's some things you need to think about there. And unfortunately, the guidelines have changed a little bit. So I just heard yesterday that in some circumstances, people were only looking at payroll with regards to these loans. And there's now a new component with regards to pass-through that you can now go back and add to the loan if you forgot to include the pass-through income of the owners. So you can now add to that loan, and then that qualifies now for additional forgiveness. So I'm getting, Tricia and I meet every day and summarize our day, because she's in charge of basically communication at certain levels with managing the payroll process as it relates to all of these new changes. And my job then is to also spend quite a bit of time dissecting every component and finding ways to communicate that to our franchisees and help them educate themselves for their business and then their clients. And so we're basically all hands on deck for at least another 8 weeks to kind of manage through this whole phase. And I know there's a lot of timelines in place, but from my perspective and experience, there's going to be some more changes and or extensions and opportunities. So, staying involved in, obviously people listening to these webinars and you hosting them is extremely important during these times. So I think reaction was critical. Staying on top of everything is critical, and being able to help is critical. I typically have 2 or 3 things I want to accomplish every day. It isn't unusual if I need to pass those off 2 or 3 days, because I need to pay attention to the 10 new things that I didn't expect happening today, and kind of translate through that and make sure that that's being shared with the people that we're working with. So I think right now it's just more about reaction and communication and paying attention, and then kind of deciding what wiggle room you have with what resources are available. A little bit of reaction mode, unfortunately.
Yeah. As I hear you, as I listen, to what you're saying, it's very much reacting, because what can we do right now, right? We're learning every day, and it's changing every day. And I think that's probably the new normal. And I could tell you that from a technology standpoint, that's sort of like where we're headed anyway with constant change. But so when we look at your franchisees, Sean, and again, I know this is sort of a question of, you don't know, it's one day at a time, but what are some of the things maybe feedback loops you're getting from them, ways that they're dealing with the pandemic, ways that they might be being innovative on how they can manage cash flow, dealing with either generating new revenue or reducing expense or whatever? What are some of the ideas they've been bringing to the table, maybe, if any? I don't know.
Absolutely. Well, we're even at our home office or our home office location, right in Littleton, the Payroll Vault Littleton office, we're monitoring things on a weekly basis and looking at data this year compared to last year. And so we did a couple things to kind of identify with the franchisee and maybe potential leads. One of those was what we call one-to-one calls. And we do those on a kind of as an as-needed basis, connect with our franchisees. But we kind of took a little bit more aggressive approach to that. And we scheduled several over the last couple of weeks. I had another one today just to check in with the franchisees and see how they're doing, what they're thinking. We sent out a questionnaire. What do you need right now, immediately? And then we sent out another questionnaire about 2 weeks ago of how are you doing and what's the impact that you're seeing. And two things came from that. One is, I think our larger Payroll Vault offices saw a softer impact to all of this. They didn't see as much of a transition or change in their business as you might expect. And I think a lot of it has to do with payroll's a big part of what the stimulus package is, right? But people did close, they did for temporary purposes, or they need to let people go and those types of things. So, but we also saw maybe our less experienced franchisees maybe see some more dramatic impact. So we kind of talked through that and what that might look like. So again, right now it was a little bit of education, but the other thing we do is we focus a lot of attention around key performance indicators. So those key performance indicators we talk about on a regular basis, and they have a direct impact on your financials, but with those weekly numbers, one that was really interesting is we measure, how many clients drop for whatever reason, they go out of business or whatever that might be, and clients were onboarding. And during the same 9-week period last year to this year, I think last year we saw 3 clients fall under that drop category at the Littleton office. We saw 0 this year. We did see 30 go on a payroll hold. Last year we had 0. So the potential is, my concern is I hope those businesses can survive this, but my anticipation is, 5% of our clients may not, 10% may not. I don't know that number, but there is that risk. And we have already heard businesses close. So those key performance indicators. What surprised me a little bit is our onboarding. Last year, during that 9-week period, we had 19 clients scheduled for onboarding. This year we have 39. So, and I think that, it actually went up. And so the thing is, what we communicate. And so the other thing we're doing is we have a monthly owners call. We have a monthly sales call. During the past 9 weeks, we moved that to weekly. So we're sharing that data and letting our franchisees know that clients need help in this time and expect your phone to ring. And then we went through the process, taught them. Typically, we like to meet with our clients, right? Or get to know them, see their business, talk to them at their location and get a good understanding of their business. We have to do all this remote onboarding and business development online now. So literally teach them, walk them through that process and what that might look like. So we paid close attention to key performance indicators, close attention to our franchisees' needs, and then we paid close attention to how we can support that. And we're producing information on a weekly basis to help support their needs, whether it be operational or business development.
That's great.
I hope I answered your question.
With the accounting background, it's no surprise you zero in on KPIs, right? No, it totally answered the question. Thank you very much for that. But go ahead, Wade.
Yeah, so back in week 1 of the Fight for Your Franchise Challenge, we started with, as you know, key performance indicators and goals. Setting goals for this 90-day period. We kind of set for the challenge and then asked the listeners and the participants to go ahead and come up with 90-day goals and then break them down to KPIs and have something they can measure. And then every week as we're moving through this, as you know, we reflect on those KPIs to see how we're doing. But that's one of those financial mastery tips, folks out there, that if you haven't used KPIs and you just kind of work hard and see what kind of money's left in the bank account at the end of the week, having some structure right now is critical. And as I mentioned last week, that some people are finding not only KPIs around making more, but in spending less and creating ways to save as well as and cut expenses as well. And that's another one.
Oh, I can't. I think
we lost you, Rob.
Oh, no, I'm here. Sorry.
There you are.
Thanks, guys. I was just chiming in to say that, I think in every interview that we've had, there's been mention of digitizing the approach, right? And in some cases, many are saying, and maybe you'd say this, Sean, maybe not, maybe it's temporary, but many are saying, hey, there might be scenarios where we would just do this anyway. We'll keep doing it this way. Maybe it's certain clients, but the idea of onboarding remotely, or and we'll talk a little bit about franchise virtual discovery days, but just changing the way you're doing business, but then seeing, wait a minute, we could save some costs here, or reduce some expenses because we can do it this way. It works. Mm-hmm. So
I like the KPIs that I'm used to, which are typically business development driven and financial performance driven. So I paid close attention to those in the past. But Rick, to your point, I am actually realizing we were going to conferences and events monthly, right? You see me in and out of the office all the time. Yeah. I'm off to Vegas for this
flying around.
Yeah. And honestly, I was talking to Marilyn this morning. We're out for a walk in the early morning, and it was interesting because the topic came up. I wonder if we're going to be aggressive as we have been in the past in participation in travel and events and those types of things, because we've actually just in the last 9 weeks seen a dramatic decrease in the amount of money we are spending with regards to things that were pretty standard before that can't happen right now. And I definitely want to support restaurants and hotels and the travel industry, primarily for fun, right? We'll have a little fun again sometime soon, but also but I do think it's going to change a little bit with respect to expenses businesses need to incur. So hopefully we can find other ways to make that money and support all the local businesses out there, no matter what industry. But there are some cost savings to be had or identified during times like this. And one other example I'll use, that we don't always have to talk about money, but our time, right? Think about our time. And I know remote work environment might be scary to some people. We're used to it. We're used to doing 99% of all of our training online and 99% of all of our support online through Zoom. We've been using Zoom for, 5 or 6 years now. But think about time as a valuable asset too. And if we're not necessarily commuting all the time to work, use that time to your advantage. That's the one thing I try to do every single day. I mentioned earlier on the call that I typically have 2 or 3 things that I want to get done during the day, as long as I don't have too many interruptions. And those 2 or 3 things actually save us time and money in our future. So most of my goals with our company is to find ways and identify systems that make things more efficient, better, and actually save us time so that we can leverage that, probably our number one resource, to our advantage and just be more efficient all the way around.
Yeah, and we're kind of redefining time management, aren't we? Because like you said, the commutes, the travel, all of the things that took up time now are being more condensed. And I think that, we're changing in a lot of ways. And what we're doing with our clients on the coaching side is helping them redefine their schedules and like you said, get more out of it that's beneficial time. And it doesn't have to be all work time. Like you said, work hard and play hard. I would much rather, people cut some time out of their schedule. That's what we call wasted time, or time that doesn't produce on either side, and then turn it into something productive with their families or with their church or with their friends, or go scuba diving or go do something fun. Guess you can't probably travel to go scuba diving right now, but maybe you can go ride your bike or go for a hike. But those things will come back, and then the new normal will be there, right? So we'll see that happen. So if you were to give it, let's say you're talking to a client now of Payroll Vault, and let's say it's a restaurant owner and they're a franchisee, what kind of gold nugget advice would you give them for ways to save a little money? And for the listeners, remember that we're looking for those special gold nuggets, ways to become more profitable, and saving money is a way to become more profitable too, right? It's not just how much you make, it's how much you spend, right? So what are some real world ideas that you'd be suggesting to your clients these days?
Yeah, interesting question. Gosh, I say these types of things all the time, and I get criticized a little bit because it's going to sound counterintuitive, right? So my recommendation is, number one, be consistent, but be adaptable. And those are 2 completely different concepts, right?
Right.
But consistency brings, and obviously, especially now we added communication. We've talked a little bit about that, but consistency brings security. And consistency also brings more kind of focus in on who you are, what you do, why you do what you do. So you always have to, even at a time like this, I think consistency in who we are and what we do was most important. But then flexibility also is important, especially during a time of technology and change, right? So I know several professional level businesses, whether it be accountants, lawyers, payroll companies, whoever, but professional services that weren't flexible enough to literally work remote and had to keep their offices open during this difficult and unsafe time, right? In order to do that. So I think flexibility means you identify with opportunities. You don't ignore them. And the people, you see it all over the place right now, the people that are being real flexible, but you can also see they're being fairly consistent to what maybe the one thing is that they're good at. So I would definitely stay consistent. If it works, but realize there's a lot of resources and a lot of opportunity to improve what you do by being a little flexible and dynamic to kind of what those opportunities are. Be aware. Just be aware that, being aware and adaptable, it gives you that flexibility underneath a consistent business model, no matter what.
That's a good point. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is. They are counter ideas, aren't they?
They are. I'm famous for them for some reason.
Well, there's a guy that has two sides of his brain working, right?
Right. Entrepreneurial and accounting and legal, right?
Yeah.
A good deal. Any follow-up thoughts or ideas or tips for the audience, Sean, that, if there's one thing you could leave the audience with, what would be in the midst of this unprecedented times, what would be the one thing that you would embrace? I think you just mentioned a couple key things, but is there something that you have found you and your team have embraced the last 8 weeks, and that if you were telling another business owner, another entrepreneur, this is the key thing? Is there something like that you feel is important?
Yeah, I kind of look back to maybe some of the presentations I've done in the past. I think entrepreneurship, I remember Rick just mentioned it and then you did. It's about grit in my mind. Usually at times like this, I mentioned actually Trisha, our COO, and myself, we were planning a couple trips when all of this kind of shut down. And together we banded, and probably like everybody else who's working, and hopefully everybody can get back to work quickly, but we found ourselves putting 4 times the effort in as a normal day. And I think grit is a result of that, having a little bit of grit and saying, hey, we're willing to do anything to make this work. And knowing that on the other side of it, there's going to be, number one, ability to help people, but number 2, opportunity that's still going to be there. So I think and I like to define things, and I don't have the definition of grit, and knowing that maybe I was going to be asked some of these questions, but look it up. I think that's a really important thing to do. We can Google it all real quick, right? But having grit is something that I think is really important at a time like this.
Yeah, it's like when we interviewed Anthony from Exponential Fitness, and they have 1,500 fitness studios across the country that were all closed all at once.
Yeah.
And they couldn't operate under normal open for business status, so they did online training, and they had to adapt. And his famous line from the Rocky movie was, "It's not how hard you hit, it's how hard you can get hit and still get up and keep fighting." Right.
That's some grit, right?
And that's grit right there. Yeah, absolutely. And that's really why we started this Fight for Your Franchise Challenge, is that we know that sometimes in the wee hours of the night, we can get kind of bummed out and negative, and as entrepreneurs, and what we wanted to do with this challenge is just help franchisors and franchise owners have a little bit of guidance, a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and just to know that they're not in it alone, and that entrepreneurs do amazing things when the chips are down. And what we've been able to report through this process and through the podcast and articles and everything is that people are really fighting the fight, and they're getting through it. And that's how entrepreneurs make a difference. So we're very excited about that. And folks, we're getting close to the end here. So we'd like to thank Sean Manning from Payroll Vault, and also let you know that if you want to learn more about Payroll Vault, you can go to franchisebiblecoach.com. They are on our wall of fame, of course, and you can click right on their logo and learn more about that, or go to payrollvault.com. Is that correct, Sean?
Yep, payrollvault.com.
There you go. All right. So we're going to wrap it up for this week, folks. Just remember that you can go to franchisebiblecoach.com if you haven't signed up yet. If you have, please tell your friends, join up, and all you have to do is put in your email, and you will get in your inbox every Monday a free coaching session, access to the podcast, access to the article, which is on entrepreneur.com, and of course, invitation to join our Facebook group. So I know you have a community already, but if you want to extend your family and community to the Franchise Bible Coach group and start asking questions and sharing ideas on our Facebook page, please join us for that as well. And we're signing off. Thank you, Rob. And thank you, Sean. And we'll see you guys. Yes, we'll see you guys next time on Franchise Bible Coach Radio with Rick and Rob. See you next week, everybody.
See ya.